Welcome to a special bonus episode of Everly Heights Tales. I'm Bill Meeks. Now, if you listen to our last tale, Hey Marie Molecule, you know how much it was influenced by science educators I grew up with on TV like Mr. Wizard and Bill Nye and Beakman, Paul Zaloom himself. Spoilers, I have an hour-long interview with Paul Zaloom where we talk about his Everly Heights, aka the town he grew up in New York. Don't worry, we also talk a lot about Beakman's world, and he gets nostalgic about his history in avant-garde theater. But before we get to Beakman, I mentioned at the end of Hey Marie Molecule that it was an entry when I was a reality podcast contestant on America's Next Top Podcaster that's put out by Coverville Media. And as you can imagine, since it was a reality show competition, they recorded everything we did as far as the planning and experts advising us on things. So I thought it might be fun, before we get to Beakman, to go back and take a peek at the development process and, the final judging in the competition of the original Hey Marie Molecule script. So if you're here for Beakman, you can skip ahead about 20 minutes and you should land on the interview. But if you enjoyed Hey Marie Molecule, first up you're going to get a full behind-the-scenes breakdown of how we developed it. Okay, enjoy the show. First up, we talked to show producer Bobby Frankenburgger about our concept. Marie Molecule herself, September, wasn't quite sold on it, and she was really pushing for more of a Star Trek thing.
So that's what you want to do, is you want to find those things in this area that you're thinking about science fiction stuff specifically. Are you staying with Star Trek? Are you set on that?
Well, we have another idea to, Bill had an idea to make it into a kids science show.
Yeah.
Where, a kid has a question and then telling the story using scientific method, basically, as a framing.
Yeah.
I have concerns about pitfalls with either creating, we could use Bill's kids or pretend a kid's voice or...
Yeah, I have a couple stock kid voices.
Yeah. So I love the idea of kid stuff. It would interest me. One of the things that the risk with that, if you're thinking about it on more of a meta competition level, the risk with that is going to be it's harder to predict how the judges are going to react to, because when you're doing something kid oriented, you have to approach it differently for a kid audience, and you could do a great job at that. It's just you got to wonder, are the judges' heads going to be in that space, ready to receive it in that way?
That was one of my concerns. And the landmines of exactly what age kids are you trying to hit?
And those are solvable problems.
I think, if we were to move forward with that idea, I would definitely maybe bring my wife in on a call, because she's a former educator. She still works at a school, actually. So she might have some, especially if we have like an age range we're targeting, she might have some specific guidance for us to kind of push it there and make it educationally sound,
Right. You just want to find that way you're going to do that, balancing that, or, line of, walking that line of making it accessible. That's a benefit of doing the kid stuff, like a kids focused audience, is that by definition you're trying to make it really accessible to everybody. But also you don't want to go, in terms of the competition and for older audiences like the judges, you don't want to go too far in like a hokey thing. I don't know if you've ever listened to kids science podcasts, but they sometimes are hard to listen to.
Yeah, they can get a little too.
Yeah.
And we're not Disney. We have not mastered the appealing to the adults and the children at the same time.
Right. And the reason I say all that, and I say that you could do a great job doing it, is because my kids listen to these kids science podcasts and they love them. Like they're the people who make them are doing a great job. You got to always keep in mind that for the competition, your audience are the judges. Technically.
I don't know Jenny very well, but I know Scott and...
Somebody did, again, on a meta level, somebody did in the last season try to do one of the challenges, do a kids show, or a teen, like a tween audience show. And some of the judges really liked it and thought it was a really cool, creative approach. And some of the judges just couldn't, like, it just didn't land with them. So that's the only reason. That's the real reason I bring that up as a risk, is because I've seen it before.
So if we were to approach it that way, we would have to make sure to strike a balance to where we're not keeping the judges out of it because it's too kiddie.
Right.
You know, like it can be basic, but it can't be childlike.
Right. Well, you could also use the kids. Maybe don't explicitly say that it's a kids show, but you can use the kids as a device to teach. You know, there's the whole classic. I do this on our podcast. It's structured as a Peabody and Sherman style thing. Yeah. You have your expert who's talking to someone who either truly doesn't know what you're talking about or is at least pretending not to know. And that's a really good setup for education and science, especially. If your kids could be the Sherman, the person who doesn't know, and you could use them as in that way as a tool, as a device.
Oh, go ahead.
Physics
September.
in particular is going to be much, much harder to find something you can explain in that language and keep it engaging.
Oh, I don't know. That's the challenge right there. I think I would disagree with that. I tell my kids physicsy stuff all the time. It's just finding the language to say it. Now, like if you're trying to, there are some things that are going to be a little more challenging. But really, like if you're talking about quantum physics, that's more challenging to tell a kid about. But really, the challenge there is, what do you leave out? Because you can still explain some of the high-level concepts. You can still find ways to express. So I wouldn't write things off and assume that they're too complicated. The challenge is to find ways, because that is this week's challenge, is to find a way to take something complicated like science and educate a general audience,
Yeah. Do you think a good path to kind of simplifying it for an audience would be to, find like some sort of like really strong metaphor to hang a concept on?
Absolutely. Metaphor is huge. I try to look for those whenever I can. Another tool for simplifying things, we have a rule on our show. Every segment that we have, whether it be news or some kind of feature segment where we're talking about a big science thing, sometimes this is hard and we break this rule, but we start from this place, which is we have a budget of only one complicated jargony word per segment. Anything else we need to say that has one of those words, we find another way to say it. And we only have the one because if we have the one, we can use it, we can define it, and we can continue to use it and remind people how we defined it. But if we add in more, then they start getting tangled and overlapping, and it's hard to remember which definition goes to which word and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so probably better to introduce, explain, hit it a couple times, and then you're out, kind of thing.
Yeah. And since you have a 10-minute thing, you might be able to increase that budget to 2, but they need to be really far away from each other so that there's no confusion, or you're only talking about one at a time, and once you're done using this word, you will never use it again, so now you can use another one. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I kind of like the idea on really focusing in on one thing, because one thing about these kids podcasts too, if we end up going in that direction, is that a lot of them are fairly short. Like 5 to 10 minutes is like the max. So if we do one concept and we come in at a 6-minute episode, that's almost genre appropriate, more so than any of our other shows this challenge, because we have such a short time limit normally.
There's a show that I listen to with my kids called Brains On, and it's actually 30 minutes long. And they use a lot of, like you're talking about, analogy, but in the form of story. They will create characters and a story that they use to tell, to explain a science concept. So that's one way you could go. Now, again, I don't want to sound like I'm like drilling in on the kids idea, because I know, September, it sounds like you're not totally convinced on that. But a lot of the lessons of doing that apply all around, which is use metaphor, anchoring, like I said, and then you've also got, slow down. We also, another rule of thumb that we have on our show is that when we're writing stuff, and this is hard to remind yourself about, and sometimes we forget, but I always try to act like my audience is like my grandma or some person who doesn't know anything about this. And I imagine that I'm talking to that person.
Mm-hmm.
And I want, my mother-in-law to understand what it is I'm talking about. And so if I'm about to use a word that I know she wouldn't get, maybe I don't use that word,
Yeah.
And that's, I think, what appeals to me about using something fictional to explain science to someone, because that's what I often end up resorting to in real life when I'm trying to explain something science-y.
Next, we talk to another advisor, Tom Merritt, who's kind of a friend of mine, has been for a number of years, about, what he thought about our concept once we had finally committed to doing Marie Molecule.
Hello, Team 1. And
Hi,
what
Tom.
science topic are you picking?
We picked physics, Tom.
Easy stuff, right?
Yeah,
That's great.
We figured we'd go for the simple, it's natural sciences and then physics, and there's no in between, really.
Yeah, so just, balls dropping with feathers at the same rate, stuff. Now, what are you going to do?
And then the kids show, to me, was a separate thing where we do something like actually go into X-rays or holograms or something that kids are into and are more ubiquitous to them.
And in your examples just now, the MRI one is kind of physics, but it's more technology. And the X-ray, like how X-rays work, gets just the way you said it, leaned more towards physics, which may be a reason to lean towards the kid explanation, because you can.
Well, the guy won a Nobel in physics for it, but just
when you're doing the kid explanation, it's right up front. Like you naturally did it. You talked not about X-ray machines, but about X-rays. And so it just lends itself more to like, let's talk about the actual topic. The kid-oriented one, like I said, high risk, high reward could come off as cheesy, but it certainly makes it easier to be like, let's explain how X-rays work, Bobby.
Yeah. Well, I think September was kind of leaning towards that one anyway. So that it's, I think, maybe I personally got so locked in on kind of trying to pull this together for the call today that I lost sight of the physics part of it. So I think X-rays is definitely the way to go. I'm still a little bit divided on the kid version versus like the narrative presentation, because I think it can still work either way. So if we go with the kid version, do you think we should target it to be super short? Because a lot of these challenges are shorter versions of what you would normally be a longer podcast. Like last week's would probably be a half-hour podcast, but we had 10 minutes, right? So should we kind of translate that to this? So if it's a kid's show, which would normally be 10 or 12 minutes, should we try and aim to make it 5 or 6 minutes?
No, I would aim to make it the exact amount of time it needs to be good within the restrictions of the of the challenge. The other thing is, do you have a kid?
I have 3 of them, in fact.
Well, I know you do, but do you have one that you're willing to put on the show? And that's absolutely good.
Absolutely. Okay. I also I think the way we're kind of develop it, maybe if we go the kid route, is to kind of hop in, do some improv. I'll play the kid. I have a couple kid voices I can do. I also have a daughter who has a really great voiceover voice that we can bring in to record those lines. So yeah, we'll probably see how it kind of shakes out.
Yeah, I'm going to say, my guess is if you play the kid, you're going to get dinged.
Fair enough.
And that's not because you're going to be bad at it. It's just, I don't know. I get the sense, this is a gut feeling here, that the judges are going to be like, yeah, but we could tell it was you, Bill.
Oh, I've had a no in my head on that.
Yeah. I feel like that's like, you need an actual kid and you need to play it straight. Like have an actual kid who's actually interested, or at least, you know, you can't tell they're not. And so that's what I mean. High risk, high reward. Like you could pull it off. You're like, oh my gosh, that was like public radio quality stuff. And you could score up big points if you pull it off right. But if it goes cheesy, then you're going to get dinged worse than if you just did the straight science in your fiction.
And I'm scared of, we cannot talk down to kids, and we have to teach the judges something too.
And they're just big kids. So, that works.
So fart jokes, a lot of fart jokes, and we should be good, right?
Well, you'll win Scott.
Yeah.
And we haven't talked about any of the fundamentals here because y'all are you've done that for weeks now, but you definitely got to have, your production value and your sound and all of that. So I guess our time is up, but good stuff. Yeah, I like it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then after we got all of our advisors' advice, all that was left was for us to make the thing and be judged by the judges.
Greetings and welcome to America's Next Top Podcaster. It's a masterclass in podcasting that drank some weird blue liquid in their laboratory, and now every time there's a full moon, they turn into a reality competition. I'm your host, Brian Ibbett. Tonight on the show, we're going to put on our lab coats and move from the science of podcasting to the podcasting of science. By the end of the episode, we'll see if we still don't know much about biology, physics, and chemistry. But to do that, we need a wonderful world of judges. Let's meet them now. From the Frog Pants Network, Scott Johnson.
Hello and welcome.
I love it. From Dog and Pony Show Audio, it's Justin Robert Young.
Hey, everybody.
And from Infinite Gain, happy to welcome back Jenny Josephson.
Oh, hello.
All right. Well, last week, we gave our teams the challenge of creating a teaching podcast specifically about the areas of biology, chemistry, and physics. And we were looking for high-level concepts explained in an easy-to-understand way, keeping listeners engaged with potentially dry or dense material, and relating information to an average audience member, all in the space of 10 minutes. All right, let's move over to Questionable Ivory Drinks. They drew physics. And
hello,
September and Bill. Hey, Bill, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing, Brian?
Good. All right, so hey, Marie Molecule. First off, come on, Molly Molecule. Why not? What?
Well, it was September suggested maybe we name her Marie after Marie Curie. And
that's what I thought. That was smart.
That is smart. All right, very good.
Yeah, and I love alliteration too. So, I guess the other one would have been alliterative.
Maybe mine would have been a little too redundant. So good on you for going the right way. You'll definitely, looks like you're going to get some points from Justin for that choice. Tell me about your guest voice this week. You had someone named Eliza join you.
Yeah, she's this really weird kid who has been sleeping in my house for the past 11 years or so. She's my daughter, but she loves to perform. She actually helped us out a lot playing characters like the Wiffle Bat Kid gang leader and others on The Fakest. And she's always had she does a lot of her own like animated videos where she does voiceover for them. A lot of them actually about anxiety, which is why I kind of focused in on her anxiety for this, because it's something she kind of approaches in her own artwork. I deal with my own anxiety issues, so I thought it would be a good sort of problem for her character to have,
Got it. Is she a budding podcaster?
Not podcaster, YouTuber. Like I said,
okay.
she does a lot of animations and stuff.
Cool. Oh, very cool. All right. Well, let's get to our judges. We're going to start off with Scott this time.
Okay. Congratulations this week on being the best produced of the three.
Thank you.
I think by a long shot. I really liked the quality of it. I struggled, though, with a thing that's probably just me. And based on the scores of my cohorts here, I think I might be alone in this. But I'm not big on acting stuff. I will say your daughter was great. That isn't to say September was bad. It's just acting's hard.
Mm-hmm.
And this struck me as not too artificial. Here's what it struck me as. It struck me as the audio track to an animated short. Mm-hmm. And if that's what this was, it would have been amazing, because I think it fits that. And it was clearly, kind of, well, let's learn about X-rays and this sort of stuff. Let's learn it through the eyes of a kid. And I think that's valuable and good. And you guys did that really well. I just get so hung up on we're playing a role here. And I think I'm just not used to that keep being my science podcasts. So that threw me. Again, probably a very much a me thing, which is, I guess we're all judging based on me things. So that's a me thing for me. So I had a little harder time following it. I thought the X-ray stuff, the actual history of all that was really interesting and well portrayed. Again, that stuff was only hindered in my mind, again, a me thing, by some of the sort of, pageantry around it. Again, if it was aimed at little kids, and I think it, kind of was, but if it was animated, I think you might have something really special here, because the sound quality, production quality, pacing, timing, all that stuff, top notch, like the best of the week, maybe the best of the competition this year. But that one hang up for me was just that, I don't know, it's just that one choice. It's hard. It's not a universal thing. I can't go, well, as you know, everyone hates actors. I can't do that. I think it's just me in this one case. And so take that for whatever that's worth. But, overall, a really solid job here.
Oh, thank you. And yeah, I think, the acting thing, especially when you're not working with professional actors, it's really difficult. And I agree with you that I feel like this would make like a really solid animated concept, because kind of the general idea is she's kind of walking Eliza around to these different stations where she has these experiments set up to display the certain things, and that's where the sound effects come from. And I was listening back to today, and I was like, this would be so much more effective if you actually saw her cutting into whatever gross thing she's cutting into when she's talking about the body, or all that kind of stuff.
I don't even want to know what you guys were using for sound effects for that part. But
I kind of intended for the listener to fill in the blank however they wanted. It could be a cadaver, it could be a cake.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Did not sound like an appetizing cake, but let's get over to Jenny to hear what her take is.
It could be a cake baked in the shape of a cadaver.
It could be.
Exactly.
Cake or not.
Is it cake?
Is it cake? Okay. I also thought this podcast was really sound, and I really liked the specificity of the title. Like, I absolutely knew right away it was for kids. I thought it was a cute open, and also like just props to your daughter for doing such a great job. Like, I was like, who is this person? She's great, and I didn't know who it was. Like, I didn't know the voice. So
yeah, it felt like cheating a little. Not saying it is, and it didn't count against you. But she's that good. Like,
yeah, she was really great.
Good. Yeah, and I will say too that my daughter was actually a little nervous about recording with the stranger. So I recorded as my daughter with September, and then I went in and recorded all the lines with my daughter. So
interesting. So you were daughter proxy.
Gotcha.
Excellent. Thanks, Jenny. All right, let's get over to Justin.
I don't appreciate Scott's xenophobic comments about acting podcasts. They're a viable part of the landscape. And I know from the Fakest that it is a specialty of yours, Bill. I thought this was adorable. This was great. I don't know what kids podcasts sound like, but this one sounded like a kids podcast, and I think it got what it needed to. You explaining that what you were going for was the child protagonist going from station to station and sound effects happening makes a lot of sense, because they did sound call and responsey, like and it's like, oh, we're gonna do this and then this happens, where like my instinct is usually more to go atmospheric. It makes sense if that was the idea in your head. It did not translate perfectly for me, but again, the fact that it was a little like oh, I'm gonna say a word, I'm gonna say Ray, and then pew pew like happens right afterward. It made sense to me as a kids podcast, where I know all kids entertainment, somebody has to fall down or fart every 5 seconds, or else the kids are no longer interested in it. This is my favorite of the week. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Justin.
Yeah, I think it's funny. In 4 seasons of this show, this is the first time somebody's created on their own an idea of a kids podcast. And I visualized Powerpuff Girls style animation while I was listening to this. I don't know if anyone else did.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so it wasn't just me. All right, so we have, speaking of scores, the judges have scored everything with 8 different metrics in mind, starting with creativity, entertainment value, sound quality, and then some specifics for this week. Those scores have been tabulated. It is Hey Marie Molecule by Questionable Ivory Drinks. Congratulations, Bill and September.
Well, oh my goodness, thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to tell.
I guess Eliza gets some congratulations.
I was going to say, we were saying in our Discord, I'm going to tell Eliza that you guys almost accused me of cheating because she was so good.
You should tell her that. She was really, she really was awesome.
She was excellent.
Yeah.
She has
She's
a
a total
future.
pro.
She's really good.
The show doesn't work if she's not great, and she was great.
Yeah, and if she, this is an idea for her, right? She could animate something like this, turn it into a YouTube, like a regular YouTube thing.
She has discussed animating this exact thing once it releases publicly and stuff. She was like, "Oh, I'd like to animate that. That'd be fun."
Oh, she totally should.
Wow.
That would be so true.
Animated before, so it's ready when it gets released.
Very true. Very true.
There you go. Cool. Excellent. Well, congratulations to you two, and keep on, educating us and teaching us about X-rays. I had X-rays today, by the way, so it was timing was perfect on that.
Good primer for you.
Did we make you less scared, honey?
Yes, I was less scared. I was far less scared.
And now, at long last, here's my full interview with Paul Zaloom, aka Beakman from Beakman's World, that took place about 2 years ago on my Where I'm From podcast, which was interviewing people about where they were from and was kind of stealth research for Everly Heights. I wanted to do an interview show. It had to be about something, and I was curious to see how favorably or unfavorably people view their hometowns. And if I could tap into that sense of nostalgia I try to tap into in the stories in an interview format. So it's a long, in-depth interview, plenty of Beakman talk, a little bit of talk about his hometown, his Everly Heights. But I think you're going to enjoy it if you're nostalgic at all for Beakman, which I know I am. Welcome to Where I'm From, the podcast that proves no matter how far you go, you'll always keep a little piece of home with you. I'm Bill Meeks. This week, actor and puppeteer Paul Zaloom joins us to talk about where he's from, the village of Garden City in Nassau County on Long Island, New York. He's Beakman, and we've just broken into Paul Zaloom's world. You might know Paul Zaloom better as Beakman, the other scientific sketch comedian who hosted a 90s Saturday morning educational show called Beakman's World.
Stay in there. Get ready for Amazement City. Ray? Ha ha! Bada bing! Bada bang! Bada ball.
Paul's an accomplished performer with a background in everything from theater to puppetry to sketch comedy. But years before he traded quips with Lester the Rat, he kicked around the village of Garden City. Garden City, New York, was founded in 1869 by merchant millionaire Alexander Turney Stewart to create a place that, quote, embodied his ideals, wisdom, and wealth, which is probably why Paul describes it as 100% white and square and boring as hell. Let's talk to Paul about his community, the surrounding cities where he went to school and got more hip, and maybe one or two science questions, just for fun. Most people, I think, know you as Beakman. Do you think there were any local influences where you're from that kind of informed the Beakman character?
Well, the local TV, Soupy Sales, that was a local show. I think it got syndicated later on, but it was a kid show, the Soupy Sales show. And that was on in the 50s and 60s. And that was a pretty big influence on Beakman. I thought, it was kind of the way to go, is to follow the Soupy model. And I guess they may have shot in Chicago at some point, but then they were in New York, and he had started somewhere in the Midwest. So I know he was shooting out of New York at some point in his career, but we were very influenced by the way he treated the frame of the TV, like it was a stage, like that it had edges. It's like an old vaudeville way of looking at it.
Proscenium. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that meant that there were wings, and he would look into them, and, he played to the crew. So his eye line was to the crew. I mean, that had never been done in television before or since.
Yeah.
Except I think the Uncle Floyd show did that, which was influenced by Soupy. Uncle Floyd was a New York local, and I think syndicated TV show that was kind of a spoof on a Soupy style kid show. And he played to the crew. So the eye line would be where your eye line would never be, talking to, people off mic, and they're laughing, and, there's like a dozen of them. That's it. And then the White Fang and Bluetooth were hands that came in, the arms that came in fursuits. And you never saw, and Soupy would look up at them. You never saw them. All you saw was the arm. And I think it's really great for kids that it's not all spelled out. You had to use your imagination. Like, what is that thing? And they would come and go, and then Soupy would translate whatever he said. And, the guy would bring the arm would bring in a pie or whatever.
Uh-huh.
So we had that thing of a hand coming in from the side. It was a character called Ray.
Ray, I need a light. No. A mud light. Oh, thank you. Now this beautiful...
It was a way to have things brought onto the set. Like if we needed a cup and some glue or whatever, Ray could bring that in. And he was an IATSE guy. He was a prop guy, but he also had a union card because he was a comedian, I guess the SAG card. And so every time the director, Jay Dubin, would say, okay, have Ray bring it in, the crew would all go cha-ching. He was getting like the daily rate.
Those royalties for a hand are very high, especially back in the 50s. When you were growing up there, was there a lot of local theater? Did you get involved in theater stuff locally, or was that more when you went to college and everything?
Yeah, only in school.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the school plays. And of course, they were, competitions. There were two teams in the school, the blue and the red. I, of course, was the blue. My whole family, we were all blues. They would have one play a year, and part of the tally that the two teams were trying to reach, because it was all the sports, all the points, we competed at the end of the year. So one of the ways to earn points was having the better play. That was more my speed than the athletic stuff.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember what plays you did? Did you do like classics like Our Town or?
I don't remember. I mean, I remember in public school, because I went to public school in kindergarten, first grade, we did a show where we were all rabbits.
Mm.
Each one of us, our moms would make the costumes. It had a pretty wild aesthetic all over the place.
I was going to say, I think we share that, though, because my first stage production, I was Thumper in Bambi. So we both got our starts playing rabbits.
Yeah, and one family rabbits had spots and one family didn't. I don't know what that was about, but I played the lead role of the Daddy Bunny. And I do have pictures of me in my costume, looking like super cute. I remember in high school what plays I was in. Arsenic and Old Lace. I played a cop.
Classic.
Yeah, just played a minor role, but kind of stole the scene. Me and the guy with me, there were two of us. And I said, let's chew gum. We'll make a big deal out of blowing bubbles and shit like that. And so that's what we did. And we kind of stole the scene, but it was okay, I guess.
That's always so fun when you can find someone, a fellow actor on stage to because you're performing the same play over and over and over again. It's nice to be able to change it up. Like I remember when I was in Dial M for Murder, I was the detective, and I would write the most obscene things I possibly could on my notebook that I showed to another character during the show. And it would be like a challenge to see if I could get him to break,
Right. In high school, I was in the Zoo Story, and the playwright was an alumnus of the school. So he came to the production. I was like 15 or 16. And, this is a 6-page speech. I played Jerry in the Zoo Story, and Edward Albee's in the audience. And so I did vamp a little bit, and he said he didn't appreciate the variations on the text, which I understand. He wrote the thing. It would have been good if I had memorized my lines, but it was a tough school. It was a lot of homework and all kinds of crap, and I've never been much good at learning lines. But anyway, and then we also did The American Dream. I played Mommy. That's another Albee play. I played Mommy, and I had my hair and my beard in curlers. I had a beard, I guess, when I was 18 or whatever, but we did a super campy version of The American Dream.
Mm-hmm.
Think crazy questions.
What's an amoeba? Do Eskimos have refrigerators?
Think outrageous answers. Let's hand jive. Think the wackiest experiments on
Beakman's World. Abso-flippin'-lutely.
CBS.
Beakman's World, one of the things that I always remember about it is all the costumes and the wigs, and your Roy G. Biv character always sticks out in my mind is like the hippie guy. I guess you got to start sort of putting on different characters physically pretty early on.
Yeah, they got the idea from the first show I played Galileo and to have an Italian accent. And Betsy Potter, the costume designer, tricked me all out in this sort of Renaissance-y, corny Italian outfit. And I played Galileo with like a cartoony Italian accent.
Hey, buongiorno. I'm Galileo.
Galileo.
I'm so nice, they say my name twice. Hey, did you know this?
And I remember the writers saying, can you do other accents? I said, yeah, I mean, I can pretty much just tell me what you want and I'll do the best I can. Which, ranged from being pretty okay to like really not okay. But I got to play a lot of characters and that was really fun.
Yeah, you can definitely tell you like kind of cycling through them. Again, I bring up the Roy G. Biv character just because that sticks out of my mind. But I feel like you probably played 5 or 10 different characters in every episode of Beakman's World.
Definitely not that many. I mean, there was Art, the chef, the cook, and he was just more New York than Beakman was. Beakman already had some little bit of New York going on, but Art was like totally, from the neighborhood. And
The always appetizing Art Burn. Hello to you and yous, and welcome to my humble commode.
And the director, Jay Newman, he's a New Yorker and he grew up in Brooklyn. He has a total Dems and Does Brooklyn accent. And then there was also Meekman, but that was a one shot. There was Professor Boring. Was that what it was called? Professor Boring. And I wore like sort of Jerry Lewis goofy teeth. And they were made like old film reels.
Fluid and hidden excreted from the body to the urethra. So let's face it, we're talking pee-pee. Richard and Matthew.
And he mainly did definitions, but he had like super buck teeth.
Something I didn't really realize until I started doing the research and stuff is not only, are you sort of character actor, a character comedian, but you're also, you do a lot of puppetry and stuff. What kind of led you to pursue puppetry?
I really haven't worked as an actor, except like a couple of times in 50 years. I got involved with the Bread and Puppet Theater because I went to a hippie college in Vermont.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, the next episode in our continuing giant puppet melodrama as the Teatro Mundi turns, or The Young and the Paper Mache. As you recall from our last episode, Cliff here had just opened his own service station, while Dawn finally made it onto the varsity squad. Hi, I'm Cliff. I fix cars, and I like meatloaf.
They were in residence there, and I took a couple of workshops, and they said, hey, you want to join, be in the company? And I said, sure. And so that's what I did, and I still work there, and that was 51 years ago.
What do you remember? It might not even be around anymore, but what are some sort of can't miss attractions that you'd recommend to people visiting Garden City, even like historical sites?
That's a hard question, because the one thing that I found interesting there when I was a kid was the Garden City Hotel. And this is a huge, really big, old hotel that was kind of right in the middle of the town. And I used to like to bike ride up there and then just sort of sneak in and wander around. I think there was a barber shop there that I used to go to in the basement. But I loved old things and antiques, and still do, and interested in old stuff and old architecture. So the Garden City Hotel was really cool. So, of course, I tore it down. And then we lived on a street called Cathedral Avenue. And there's this cathedral that's set in not a field, but It has like a big yard. Okay, a cathedral can have a yard. It's like a downsized Gothic cathedral. So it actually looks kind of small. It's not like Reims or, Chartres or something. It's like this, sort of little church, but it's a cathedral. I don't know what the hell makes a cathedral, but it's Episcopalian. It's not Catholic.
Money makes a cathedral, I think.
Yeah. And, Episcopalianism, that was the religion of the ruling class in those days.
Mm-hmm.
Now it appears to be Catholicism, but, back then it was old school WASP. In Roslyn, at the end of a long road that was also on a golf course, and which got turned into a housing development subsequently. The school's in like an old manor home, like an English estate. So it was pretty fancy and had fancy floors and it's all Gothic revival, and it was pretty corny.
Bougie, I guess, as the kids say these days.
Yeah.
Why did you have the commute, and how did it affect you growing up miles away from most of your friends over on the ritzy side of town?
My folks didn't have much confidence in the public school system in Garden City. I mean, I'm sure it was pretty good, the schools, but what do I know? And my dad was Catholic. My mom was Anglican. So she was, not particularly enamored with Catholicism. She was an English citizen. My mom was a war bride. My dad was a GI. My mom was an RAF. They wanted me to go to private school, all of us. And there were no private schools in Garden City at that time. I mean, there was one, but I think that was a boarding school.
Yeah. Like
a high school, secondary school. So we, this was the choice. It was called Buckley Country Day School. That corny, waspy, very much a ruling class kind of WASP, upper shelf. There were some people there their parents were middle class or upper middle class. But then there were some who they lived in neighborhoods that didn't have sidewalks.
Do you have any sort of like retroactive, guilt or something for going to kind of like a posh school with various issues swirling around you?
I don't know if I have guilt. It's just interesting. It was an interesting experience. I went to boarding school, Choate School, which is another very good school, sort of fancy and, high on the list of, good secondary private schools in the country. Mm-hmm. But I didn't really care for it much, or their philosophy, which is sort of Episcopalian. And I went to Quaker summer camp, and I found the Quakers to be much more interesting and loving of children and more progressive, and just had a much better relationship to the idea of raising kids and teaching kids. So I ended up being an exchange student for 3 months at Putney School, which was like the first sort of progressive boarding school. And then that led me to go to Goddard College, which was a hippie college in Vermont.
This is the second time the word hippie has come up. I feel moved to ask you, do you consider yourself a hippie? I mean, I know you're probably somewhere right in the right range as far as age is concerned, but do you still kind of consider yourself a hippie and the hippie aesthetic and all that?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I don't really think about it a lot. I'm not ashamed of it. I wouldn't deny it. There's a lot of aspects to me and to my life, the way I do things, the way I live, that are hippie for sure. But I don't know. Yeah, sure. I had really long hair when I was a kid, but it was super curly. So instead of it being it would just turn into a pom-pom. Like if I tied it back, it was just this big frizz ball. Mm-hmm. I definitely had a white guy afro going on, because it was just, instead of growing down, it grow just bang like that.
Just poof out.
I don't really have that problem now, but
I always tell people when I was a kid, anytime I went to get my hair cut, the barber would always go, "Man, you have such thick hair." And then when I was about 24, 25, they stopped saying that, and it kind of broke my heart.
Right.
Happens to the best of us. You mentioned, I
I that town that starts with an H, I just blanked on it.
Yeah, in Hempstead.
Yeah, you said you really enjoy it. You got a love of like thrift stores and antiquing and stuff there. Wait, what do you like about going and, hunting at a thrift store?
Back in the day in Hempstead, like I said, it was largely a Black community. There were thrift shops there where upscale folks would donate their clothes and they would be sold in the thrift shops. So I used to buy suits from like the 30s with the double-breasted with the big shoulder pads, and you could buy them for like $2 or $3. So I had at least a half a dozen of those.
Yeah.
And I've been a vintage clothes fan ever since. And also like buying used clothes or a thrift shop. This shirt I bought in a thrift shop. I guess it's kind of obvious, but whatever.
I like that strategy, though. I always tell my wife when she wants to go thrifting, I'm like, let's go up to like the thrift stores, like Plato's Closet up in Beverly Hills or something, because rich people are just throwing out the most expensive crap you can imagine, and you can pick it up for a steal.
What I like is how design reflects the zeitgeist of any particular time period. So there was tremendous optimism in the 50s and 60s after the war, and that was reflected in the design in mid-century modernism. Very optimistic about technology, solving our problems, going to the moon and space and all that kind of stuff. That's interesting. That how design reflects that. Or if you look at the Weimar period in Germany, or earlier in Vienna, the Werkstatt, just how all that design influenced artists, influenced each other, what was going on in the art scene in the interwar period in Germany. I mean, those are things I'm like obsessed with.
It's what creative synergy, right? Like, fashion influences media, influences literature, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It just kind of goes on down the line to create a whole, vibe for the time period.
Right. Absolutely.
Is there anything that you miss at all about the area?
No. I mean, the proximity to the city is great. You could get on the Long Island Railroad and be in town pretty quickly because Garden City is close to the border with Queens.
Mm-hmm.
It's not way deep in the island. I also remember as a kid going out to Montauk, once, and it was really cool out there back in the day. And the Jones Beach, which is on the South Shore, not that far from our place, those beaches are spectacular. I mean, I've never seen beaches like that, where the sand will be a mile deep.
Oh, wow.
And, like the desert or something. And they were all tricked out during the WPA era with these cool Art Deco beach houses and toll booths and all this stuff. So, yeah, Jones Beach is really incredible.
I was doing some research on you, and I saw that you grew up in a big family just like me. I think we had like 8 kids and a few steps and halves and stuff. How did, growing up in a big family, your environment push you into comedy and performance, or did it?
Well, there were 2 generations of us. There were 3 of us who were born in the 50s and 3 that were born in the 60s. And we were separated by about 10 years. We didn't really, all 6 of us, grow up at the same time. Because 10 years, that's a big distance.
It wasn't like a big brood of you. It was kind of like, a couple would filter out as the others were coming up kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we were like that too, where it was like my parents had 3 kids and then they waited like 8 years and then they had 4 more kids. So they were like the older set and the younger set. And they definitely a bit of a generational divide in the house at points.
Yeah.
But my parents got free babysitting. So.
Right. I grew up in a house on Cathedral Avenue, and the house was an old Tudor house with like really pretty green ceramic tiles. It was a beautiful house in that fake Tudor stucco with the beams, super corny crap. But inside, really nicely appointed. It had a black and white marble entryway. So black and white marble squares, and then this staircase to the side that sort of swept in a curve to the next level.
Yeah.
And my mom put orange carpeting on that, which I thought, that was just the shiznit. The orange carpet was so cool. And the motif, because it was black and white tile, everything in the entryway was all black and white. So orange really popped, and there were leaded windows in the house. And yeah, it was pretty cool house.
Yeah, that's one thing about those northeastern houses is they're just like, there's so much more style to them, where once you get like more southern and west in the country, it gets to be more like McMansions and, just like neighborhoods filled with identical houses, where, in New York, Philadelphia, places like that, it's like you walk into a place, you're like, oh, I can feel the ghost in this room. Like,
right.
Stuff happened here, and, someone had an idea for this house. So you mentioned before, Roosevelt Field was one of the earliest shopping malls. It opened when you were a kid. Do you remember the local reaction to what would become an American staple?
Yeah, sort of vaguely. I mean, I guess we were somewhat kind of excited about it. I mean, Garden City had outposts of the fancy department stores, Abraham and Straus, Lord and Taylor. I think there was a Bergdorf Goodman there. They're all bankrupt and out of the picture now.
Yeah.
But they were, and there was a Macy's too, which, thank God hasn't gone out of bankruptcy. My mom worked at Macy's in the late 40s. So I would prefer it not go under. It's a nostalgic thing.
Plus they got the parade, right? So.
Yeah. I used to have a friend who, his parents lived on Central Park West. They had a place upstairs with these really big windows, like 2-story windows. And the floats would be at eye level. And I remember one time Superman was going by and he turned and came like right towards us, right towards a window. And my kid, Amanda, she was just a baby then, or a tyke or whatever. And I remember her fingernails digging into my neck in terror that Superman was like literally coming right towards our heads.
Luckily, it was before the modern trend of making Superman evil and giving him weird, evil googly eyes and everything, because that would have been really intimidating.
Right.
I'm Beakman, and you've just broken into Beakman's World.
Paul, I've done my best so far to keep my fanboying to a minimum, but I'd love to hear the origin of Beakman's World and your involvement with it and how it all came to be, if you'd be so kind.
Well, the origin was the creator, Jock Church, had made a column in the funny pages for kids. And he did it on a Mac in the early days of the Mac when, nobody was really doing that. And he sent them out free. It was called You Can with Beakman and Jax. And it was the same sort of conceit as a show where kids would ask Beakman questions about science, and then Beakman and Jax, who were sort of equal characters in the comic strip, they would answer the questions. And so he sent it out free to different papers, and it started catching on, and they started running it, and they were also publishers. So they owned it. They hooked up with a TV outfit called Below. They made a TV show out of the comic because it was a Children's Television Act in 1990, which said in order to get your license renewed, you needed to have a certain amount of educational and or informational programming a day, a local television station. So our show was sort of designed to meet that requirement.
Yeah, the shows that have like the EI in the corner when they start up. When you got approached about that, had you ever thought about yourself as like a children's television educator, or were you like, I don't know, man, like this might not be my scene?
I mean, it was a very different turn for me. I came up in an avant-garde, neo-German expressionist, anarchist theater company that was not at all commercial. That was my background. So it was a huge cultural shift. And I had been doing my own solo puppet shows for, 15 years or something when I got hired, and just making a living by touring the shows and getting commissions and grants here and there, and just kind of eking a living out of the deal. So it was a big difference for me to go from the, downtown New York, just the wild sort of artist generated homemade theater thing, to the super hierarchical Hollywood structure, which is really built around money more than anything else. So that was an adjustment.
If I remember correctly, you guys were on CBS, weren't you?
We started out in syndication.
Oh, okay.
And we had 2 or 3 fewer stations than Jeopardy. And Jeopardy was the number 1 syndicated show in the country. So we had incredible coverage, well over 90% of the country. And then CBS went to Columbia Pictures Television. They were the producing entity that Universal Below put the show through or whatever. I don't really get it. But anyway, they said, CBS said, we want to buy this out of syndication and make it a network show. We want to take it out of syndication. And that just doesn't happen. I mean, maybe it does now, but back in the day, that's not how things worked.
Yeah.
You had shows that were on the networks that then became syndicated. You didn't have shows that were syndicated that became network shows. But they want to be able to offer their affiliates an inoculation against FCC problems with having their local licenses renewed.
Yeah.
So that's why they wanted it. And then the next week, Fox ended up buying like 8 of their stations. The coverage, I think, was like 78%. So it wasn't a great move for us in terms of coverage, but I guess it's prestigious to be on CBS. I don't know.
What was it like being a sort of a national children's entertainer? Like, did you start getting recognized when you went out to the grocery store? Or how did it kind of impact your personal life?
Well, I didn't get recognized because I wore this fright wig, with the hair sticking up, and it totally changed my appearance. So I got recognized maybe 20, 25 times. The great thing was, it wasn't. I didn't have like a trademark bow tie or any of that crap. I didn't look like the guy. So I was anonymous, and that was great. Yeah. The whole fame thing and being recognized, all that's just a pain in the ass.
It's the Clark Kent Superman effect. The wig was your glasses, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Connecting back to talking about Superman earlier, was there ever a Beakman float in the Macy's Day Parade?
No, but I was on a float in the Rose Bowl parade.
Nice.
That was, I was hired to be on a float, and I literally was dragged through the street on something made out of flowers and waved at like 1 million people. There's supposedly 1 million people on the route. I don't know, but it was interesting. It was very interesting.
I've heard it's kind of wearisome after a while, though, because you're just like, you're either doing the same 3 motions over again or just standing there like waving the whole time and throwing candy. I by the end of the parade route, it can be a little rough. Like you're like, where am I? What's going on? Disassociative.
Yeah, I mean, I just found the whole thing so sort of wacky and goofy that being in the Rose Bowl parade and being televised and then there's 1 million people on the route. The whole thing was just so goofy and so outside my experience in life that I was enjoying the hell out of it. And plus I was like, no, you got to wave, you got to, make eye contact, look alive, all the rest of it, because, it was a few hours out of my life. I just wanted to play it to the hilt. Otherwise, what's the point?
Now, back when Beakman was being produced, you said you didn't get a lot of people rolling up to you. Now that all the kids who are watching you, like me, are all grown up, have you found that you get approached more about Beakman?
No, not really. I'll get comments and stuff on Instagram or Facebook or whatever. But when Latin America is a different story because the show's very popular down there in a way that's different than here.
All right, you have broken into Beakman Live. All right, now we have a special guest here today.
It's a pop cultural phenomenon in Mexico and Brazil and other countries in Latin America that is difficult to describe, but people are fanatically into Beakman. It's crazy. I'll play to audiences of 4,000, 6,000 IPN at Polytechnico in Mexico City. They told me the audience was 10,000 people.
Wow.
Playing outside, and they go crazy. So I do a very low tech, down and dirty live science demo show as Beakman in Mexico and Brazil when I'm invited. And it's a lot of fun. And people just love the character. And so that's interesting and cool.
Was it a situation where Beakman's had a sustained popularity there since it started airing here? Or was it something where like it went there like 4 or 5 years after it started here and then kind of picked up the following?
I actually have no idea. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know when they began showing it down there, because what happened was nobody associated with the show knew anything about this. And I got invited to the 75th anniversary of the physics department at UNAM, which is the largest university in Latin America. And it was in the Mexico City branch. And this woman from the department hired me to do a show as part of the 75th anniversary. And at first they wanted me in a 600-seat theater and then an 800-seat theater. And then they said, can we do the show outside? And then eventually I ended up doing 3 shows. They said about 6,000 people per show.
Wow.
So they had no idea. I had no idea. And I got there in the stage. It was this huge stage. These cheering, screaming people just wigging out. It was, it's like the story of that guy Rodriguez in I think that's his name, in South Africa. They made a film about this guy. He made an album in the 70s. And, it didn't really sell or anything, but some people in South Africa like caught on to it and got really into it. And they made a film about the guy. It was like that kind of phenomenon. And it was a huge shock to me. I came home, told all my friends, and I don't think they believe me. I mean, they still don't believe me. I need 20 security people getting in and out of the venues. And you could say, well, why do people react that way? And it's because there was something about the character that really struck a chord with them emotionally. He was very close to the screen. He was making eye contact with the audience. And, he was a pretty friendly, approachable character. So people established a strong emotional connection to him in a way that did not really occur in the same way in the States. And it's something about the Latin sensibility. I mean, it's really interesting. I've tried to get to the bottom of why the people are so passionate about the show down there. And I'll ask people down there and they say, well, because the show is funny, or, you explain science so well, or, our kids' TV in Mexico is shitty. And, they had whatever reasons, but that doesn't explain like my car being surrounded by people pounding on the doors, like the Beatles or something. That's about emotion. That's 100% about emotion. It's about the emotional impact that character had on them.
Mm-hmm.
The way the Beatles music has this emotional impact to teenagers, when I was a kid or preteens. I mean, we just loved it because it just spoke to us. So yeah, it's mysterious and wonderful. It's been a great gift because it's really fun going down there. I've only played in Mexico and Brazil. I haven't played in Uruguay or in Chile, in Colombia, in Argentina, in all these other countries that have big Beakman fan bases, but I just haven't been invited yet.
Maybe because I always very much identified with Beakman when I was a kid. And I think it was just because he was almost like a living cartoon character. And if you strip off just a little bit of the complexity of being a human and play this broad character, a lot of time it's like Scott McCloud, who wrote Understanding Comics, says that people will identify more with a simple smiley face than a detailed photorealistic painting. And I think that's probably a lot of the appeal, at least for me anyway, of Beakman, was just that he was a living cartoon character that would come right up to the screen and talk to me. So I felt like I had a relationship with him.
Right. That does explain it. Because kids don't make a big differentiation between the person on the screen and the person in the room.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like they're looking at some celebrity or whatever. They're looking at somebody like their uncle in the room.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to pick letters out of the bin. We had a bin on the stage that went around and around in the part of the show and a hand would go in and pull a letter out. I would just go in and pull letters out. And if they had return addresses, I'd call information, get the kid's phone number, and call them up from the set just as a goof.
Wow.
And I remember calling one kid who lived in Chinatown on Mott Street or Mulberry Street in Manhattan, which was near where I lived. I lived near Canal Street in Tribeca.
Mm-hmm.
And I called the kid and he said, "Hey, thanks for calling, but like I'm in the middle of something." That's the end of the phone conversation.
Beakman got big timed by a kid.
Yeah, it was great. I loved that. I thought that was really cool.
That pisses me off just a little bit because I never wrote into you because I was like, oh, there's no way they actually read the letters. Like, this is just like, so you can get a sticker or something. I'm never going to write in. Here to find out, you could just walk around the set one day and you could have picked up Billy Meeks' letter.
Right.
Missed opportunity for me anyway.
They did respond to all the letters. I think they responded with postcards. And supposedly we got 1,500 a week at our high point. I mean, I don't know how much the letters really inspired what we did on the show, because I think the writers had to say, okay, here are all the issues we need to cover or we want to cover. We could figure out a way to cover, because the writers were all very interested in science. Mm-hmm. And then find a letter that matched that. Because in the beginning, the letters were fake because we didn't have anybody writing in because the show wasn't on the air. But after a short while, they were real kids writing in. And, we read the real kids' letters on the air.
Well, we'll go ahead and wrap up the Beakman talk. I do have one more game for you before I let you out of here, Paul. Now, these are simple this or that questions. I'm going to give you two things, and you have to pick between them and tell me why you picked what you did. Make sense?
Sure.
Excellent. Okay, first up, Gardens, and I think I know the answer to this one. Garden City versus Hempstead.
Hempstead,
obviously, because, all the artistic stuff there and everything. Okay, thrift stores versus garage sales.
Thrift stores.
Why thrift stores? You struggled there.
Yeah, I don't know. Garage sales, it's just they're harder to plan. I'm always passing when I'm like, oh, I'm in a hurry. I wish I could stop. And thrift shops are like, I'm going thrifting. We're going to the thrift shop. So
yeah, it's like appointment shopping versus a garage sale, which is like, oh, let's check it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. Okay, Pee Wee Herman versus Captain Kangaroo, two other kids entertainers.
Well, I would say Pee Wee. I mean, I really enjoyed his show. I thought it was great. It was wonderful and hilarious, and all the double entendres and everything. It was fantastic. It looked great. And the guy who did the puppets and some of the design of that show was the scenic designer of our show. And he also did the animations, the computer animations. Wayne White.
Yeah, I always felt like the two shows had a very similar vibe, a weird vibe, which I naturally latched onto. So that's interesting to hear that, yeah, there was some creative talent behind both of them,
right,
shared between both of them.
I did a pilot with the Mouse Sounds guy. It's Fred Newman. His name is Fred Newman.
Oh, Fred, he was on the new Mickey Mouse Club, wasn't he?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And really great guy and super, super talented.
And then he also did, for the cartoon Doug, he did the bop, 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 that whole theme song too.
Right.
Very talented dude. Very talented dude.
The Mouth Sounds book was super helpful to learn some of that stuff. And yeah, he's a cool guy.
Puppetry versus, physical acting.
Oh, puppetry for sure.
Puppetry.
It's way more interesting to me.
What is it that you like about it versus, standing there and playing a character as yourself?
I just like projecting something through an object and manipulating, bringing things to life and getting to play a lot of different characters and playing with scale and, everything being homemade. And it just really appeals to me. That's how I do myself and how I introduce myself is as a puppeteer. I don't really feel like much of an actor because what I was doing on Beakman wasn't really acting. It was more like performing.
Yeah.
It's just sort of two-dimensional, fake, whatever comedy. It's not like acting or, methody, like what's my motivation? It's just not like that. was playing a character.
Does performing with a puppet, does it free you up a little bit, like from feeling like you're going to get judged by the audience you're performing for? Does it give you like a layer of separation?
Well, there is a layer of separation, not so much being judged by an audience, but traditionally not getting arrested by the authorities. I mean, that's been true for many, many hundreds of years, that puppeteers could say things in their performances that actors couldn't say because an actor or a performer would get up and say these things. It's like that person is saying it, even if they're playing another character. But with the puppets, the authorities just by nature, kind of stupid. And the fact that it's mitigated through a third party, so to speak, makes it not as offensive.
So it's not necessarily protecting your personal emotions about performing. It's more protecting you from the ideas you're expressing, by putting a proxy in between the...
Yeah. Well, for a long time, people were criticizing the king or the government or whatever, would use puppets to express these things because you could be more subtle and it's more distanced, and they wouldn't get in as much trouble.
Okay, now this is a threefer. Eliza versus Josie versus Phoebe. Your three assistants on Beakman's World. Which one would you pick in a pinch?
I'm not answering that. No way. I mean, they all brought different things to the table and different talents, and they were totally different characters. And I really enjoyed working with all three of them. And we had a lot of fun on the set. We just laughed our asses off all day and got along pretty great. So it was fun.
Fair enough. Okay. And last but not least, East Coast versus West Coast, where you are now.
I love them both. I love California, and I love New York and Vermont, and I love Chicago. And there's a lot of great places. What can I tell you?
Fair enough. And so just for the last three, you get triple points, because when someone says, I can't choose, you get a bonus for that. So good job, Paul. Awesome.
Okay.
All right. Well, Paul, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I'm out here in Los Angeles. Do you do any performance out here, any live shows or anything that I could come check out?
I've been focusing on making short films in the garage since the pandemic. So I'm kind of focused on that.
Any of those online? Can people check those out?
Yeah, I have a channel on YouTube called Fruit of Zaloom. It's one word, Fruit of Zaloom, all put together. And their Santa Claus is the main character in the movies. And there's, 6 or 7 of them up there on YouTube.
Quite fun. And everyone definitely go and check it out.
Yeah, I'm using like 300 Santa Claus kitsch figures and using Santa Claus as sort of a stand-in for, the king of capitalism and consumerism, and just where I can get my jollies doing political satire using Santa Claus.
Okay, Paul, I want to thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thanks so much for joining me for this very special bonus edition of Everly Heights Tales. Did Paul Zaloom talking about Beakman's hometown inspire you to talk about your hometown? Go ahead and write me an email or send me a voicemail or a voice recording of you talking about your Everly Heights, about your hometown and what it means to you. And we'll feature it on the show in a future episode. Well, I've been Bill Meeks. Join us next week for another tale from Everly Heights. And remember, you can leave, but the town's probably going to end up pulling you back. Good night.